Everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be the first video in a 2-video series for now. I might update it later, probably will. I wanted to do a top 5 best YA books that I've discovered because of Booktube. I tried to limit it to a top 5 because I like to torture myself. But as always, since I hate choosing favorites, there are going to be a few special mentions because why not? I will be doing 8 worst ones too because I'm sure it's going to be your favorite version. For some reason, you always prefer when I hate on books, but today I'm reading about some / just recommending you some amazing YA books, some that I think are worth reading. I know there's like this whole thing on Booktube of either loving or hating YA books. I don't get it. So that's why I give love to both. So let's go through them. The first book I wanted to talk about is I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. This actually made it to the best YA contemporary I had read out of the 400 books that I've read on Booktube so far. I will link that video down below. I also did like the worst ones and everything, and it was really fun. But yes, this is a book that I discovered because of Booktube. I feel like when I started watching videos, like, oh my gosh, like 5 years ago at this point, almost, I kept seeing this book absolutely everywhere, and I'm so glad I picked it up. I feel like nowadays I would probably be scared to because it doesn't sound like something I would be into, yet here it is. I do want to mention it's not for everyone because of the writing style. You're following 2 characters that are quite artistic, and it does reflect in the writing style, and the writing is different for both of them. I'll come back to the story in a second, but just be aware, a lot of metaphor, which is probably the main complaint that I've seen in reviews. But you're following this set of twins, a girl and a boy, and you're following him when they are 13, and he's struggling, coming of age kind of story, and they are close. And then you're following her 3 years later, and they don't talk anymore, and you don't know why. And you're gonna find yourself rooting for one of them more than the other, just throwing it out there. But by the end, I ended up loving the story of the other twin probably more. So I'm just wanting to, you know, if you're reading it and you're just rooting for one more than the other, obviously I love both of them, but definitely keep going, it gets better. And yes, basically each chapter you just switch and eventually you figure out what happened between them. And it's just a story that touched me so much more than I expected. I'm not someone that really cries while reading books, but this one, my poor little heart. Can't recommend this enough. I feel like a lot of people would enjoy it. Yes, definitely a YA contemporary coming of age. And I don't want to say more actually, because you just need to read it. I really enjoyed it. I actually read it 4 years ago when I just started Booktube. I'm curious how it would feel if I were to reread it now, but I'm kind of scared, so I won't do it. Like, what if I don't love it as much if I reread it? The next book I wanted to mention is We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. When you're reading YA contemporaries, which I know people say sci-fi for that one, I probably would just consider it contemporary, but that's not important. A lot of the themes usually are coming of age, LGBTQ+. They're definitely, I feel like YA books in general are just so much better with representation. And you get obviously this in here. Other popular ones would be Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secret of the Universe, which is my least favorite in between the 3 I'm going to mention. But that one is popular if you like really character-driven stories. And there's also a popular one would be Simons versus the Homo Sapien Agenda. So in between these 3, I feel like there are more that have very similar stories, but between these 3, this is my favorite one, probably because it is darker / has little hints of sci-fi, which is one of my guilty pleasures. But you follow this main character, and you know he has been going through a lot of things, and he is being kidnapped basically by aliens, and he has a certain amount of time to decide to press on a button to save humanity, otherwise they will die. I'm gonna keep it vague once again, but I do really enjoy this book. I feel like I would enjoy reading it too. See, they say 144 days to make up his mind. So he's basically thinking if people are worth saving, and you're just going back and learning what happened to him, what he's going through, and why he wants to save or not humanity. So yes, definitely recommend that one too. I did feel like it was different from all the other ones, and definitely the one that stood out to me and touched me the most. Also, definitely not something I would have picked up by myself if it weren't for Booktube. Another author that was everywhere when I started watching Booktube was Neal Shusterman, and one of his newest series, I believe his newest series, is the Sight series, and I'm currently reading the 3rd book still, but that's on me. Yes, this series has been really fun. I feel like I've been reading less and less YA as time goes by on Booktube. I feel like the first year was about 50-50, and now it's probably 25%-ish of my reading. I'm still enjoying it quite a bit. I just feel like I'm a lot more picky with what I pick up. But yes, this is definitely one of my favorite series, at least at the moment. Why sci-fi? You follow a main character who is part of this utopian version of a world where people don't die anymore. So in order to control the population, you have this group of people that are scythe. They basically kill people and they have their special rules and everything. But obviously having this much power, you expect some people might try to use it for their own gain. So a ton of political intrigue. I feel like the story is getting bigger and bigger each book. The third one is like so much bigger, but the first one is still super interesting. I enjoyed that there's not too heavy of a romance, or like I feel like it's a very common theme in YA books also, and I haven't felt that actually with any of these books. It's not really a topic apparently that works for me. But yes, if you're trying to find a new YA sci-fi to pick up, I definitely would recommend this one. It's been very captivating. Like I said, I'm currently reading The Toll, which is the third book, and the books are getting bigger and bigger. Look how chunky the last one is. But yes, I can't put them down. I've been dying to see how it ends because the second book ends definitely on a cliffhanger, which I'm usually not a fan of, but I made an exception for this one. Definitely recommend you check out this trilogy. But yes, Neil Schusterman is definitely an author that I've seen everywhere. I did read also Unwind by him, which I did enjoy. I'm realizing I didn't include in this video. Could have been in my special mention, throwing it out there right now. Oh, by the way, I'm just going through them in order that I've read them through the years. Like these ones are the oldest ones that I've read until the newer ones. I wanted to talk about this series because I, again, would not have picked it up if it weren't for Booktube, and it is the Wayward Children series. This is actually the fourth book in this series, but it is my favorite in this series so far. I have read, I think it's done now, it's all 6 books in this series, and this one can be read as a standalone, so I'm including it in here. This is In an Absent Dream by Shauna Marie. This series is everywhere on Booktube, and once again would probably not have been something I would have picked up because I'm not usually super into smaller books, and it's probably the reason this one is my favorite compared to some of the other ones is that usually the shorter books tend to like skip ahead when there's any action or when there could have been any action. And it was my issue with some of the other ones. If I have to choose my favorites, number 4 and then number 1 would be my favorites. I feel like everyone knows at this point, but in this series you're following children who went to magical universe kind of by accident, think Narnia. And whenever they come back to the human world, they struggle to adapt. So there's this special school for it. That's what happens basically in the first book. Like I said, this book you can technically read on its own. You're following the main character who goes to this universe. Things are very logical. I feel like every world is explained in some of the other books, tidbits you get throughout the series. But this version is very logical. If you take something, you have to give something back basically. And I really enjoy that one. I don't know why I connected to that one so much more than the other ones. The writing style is just stunning, and cover also. The series in general is very inclusive. There's so much great representation. What I like the most, I think, is that everyone relates to a different world more than the other ones. So personally, this one is my favorite. Would love to hear yours. The last book in the official top 5, even though I do have some special mentions, I had to include this book. I just had to. I feel like Brandon Sanderson. Can you believe that I didn't know anything about him until I started watching Booktube? Now he's one of my favorite authors. I feel like he is fantastic at writing adult stuff, but he came out with this new sci-fi series, YA Sci-Fi, and I really like it. Not gonna lie, I did not like the Reckoner series, which is this other YA Sci-Fi. Let's pretend that never happened. But this is amazing. You're following a character who is part of the remnant of humanity, and they are constantly under attack from aliens. And there's a ton of spaceship battles in here. There's a lot of humor. There's some really lovable characters. The main one, not so much, at least in the beginning, but I like that there's so much stuff that happens. I feel like sometimes YA books will be really thick and fluffy, but not much happens. A lot happens in here, and there's this huge thing at the end, which obviously we'll not mention, but that's kind of the case usually with Brandon Sanderson. There's always a big ending, a big reveal that is satisfying. And I also read the second book, which quickly just want to mention, again, the universe expands so much, and there's just a lot more political intrigue, a lot more at risk, and I can't wait for the third book to come out next year, I believe, so obviously need to give a shout out to Doomslug. If you read this book, you will know to root for Doomslug. So basically humanity fighting for its survival, a talking intelligent spaceship, a lot at stake, definitely something I would recommend you check out. In general, Brandon Sanderson is pretty much always a 5 stars for me, so grateful that I found him because of Booktube. Now let's go with some special mentions. Patrick Ness in general is an author I discovered because of Booktube. I have read so many of his books, realizing now at least 4 or 5, and this one is the best YA one that I've read. Actually, I think I've only read YA books by him, but the best one that I've read by him, something super unique. I actually included this in my beginner's guide to sci-fi for people that tend to read more YA contemporary, to pick up this one because it literally starts with the main character waking up after dying. This sounds just so amazing to me. His book in general contain YA coming of age, usually male main character actually, that tend to be LGBTQ+, so great representation once again, and this story is super unique. I don't even want to mention anything about it except that it is kind of sci-fi, because you need to go into it blind. Just do it. It's amazing. I do enjoy his writing style also. Definitely something that I'm grateful that I found because of Booktube also. No more sci-fi. Let's go with some fantasy. The first one I want to give a shout out to is something that I don't read a lot of. It's a urban fantasy, paranormal. The Diviners by Lili O Varela. This really took me by surprise. This is not something I would usually have picked up, like, ever. It is super chunky. I did listen to it as an audiobook, by the way, so if you are into that, I highly recommend it just because you get a great cast of character. I believe there's music also, and it's just really fun to listen to. You follow the main character in the 1920s, and there's a lot of, like, ghosts and, like, is it a demon? People trying to find a serial killer, and yes, it's just a lot of fun. Definitely recommend it if that's something you are into. I believe the last book in this series just came out. I think so. I need to continue. I've only read the first book. I do have the second one on my shelf, so very soon. Okay, last but not least, I wanted to talk about these two all in one, kinda. Leigh Bardugo came out with the Grisha trilogy and the Six of Crows duology, which neither of them would have picked up without Booktube. I want to mention them together because people will usually say to pick up this duology and skip the trilogy, and I disagree. You can't do that. Well, you can, but I don't recommend it. I feel like if you really just want to jump into the Six of Crows duology, you should at least read the first book in the Grisha trilogy, just because the magic system is not explained, like, at all in here, and people say you'll understand anyway, and I disagree. Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first book in this trilogy. You're following a character who discovers that she has magical powers, and she goes to magical school, which is one of my favorite tropes ever. There's a lot at stake once again. There's this big bad person, the Darkling, and even though I do have some issues with the trilogy in general, I do find the first book is the most solid one. I really enjoyed the world building, the magic system, and there's just a lot of potential here. I didn't really care about the fact that the main character is oh so plain, yet everyone ends up falling in love with her type of thing, which is just not a trope I'm really into. But I still do recommend to check it out, at least try the first book if you want to read the other one. So let's talk quickly about the Six of Crows duology. Again, not something I would have picked up without Booktube. It's very character driven. The story, it is part of the same universe, but happens much later. So obviously same world building, different city, but still, and same magic system. I do feel like it could have been used a little bit more, and I understand why everyone tends to love it so much. If you get really attached to characters, you're gonna really adore this duology, and I completely agree. The characters are super likable, very diverse, great representation, and you just really care for them. Personally, a few things disappointed me. Again, didn't use the magic system enough. And even though they're both kind of heists, I don't feel like there's that much at stake in the sense that it doesn't feel like they're not gonna make it, like, ever. It's not a spoiler. And to keep it super vague, and again, spoiler free, I feel like in the second book, there's something that happens towards the end that I'm, like, still mad about it just because, but I still think it's one of the best books that I've discovered because of Booktube, and I cannot wait. There's a TV show, right? Coming out, and I'm very excited to watch it, and hopefully she will bring out more books in this universe because I do want to see more of the magic system. Actually, I say that, and she did come out with King of Scars, which I'm still planning on reading, but apparently the reviews are saying, but still excited. So this is it. This is my top 5 plus a special mention, the best YA books that I've discovered because of Booktube. Let me know in the comment section the best ones you have discovered and what you personally thought about these. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe because I will be also posting my worst ones very soon. I will be putting more videos on the screen that I recommend you check out, and I shall see you in my next video very soon. Bye.